One of the most iconic parts of Assassin's Creed 2 back in 2009 was the Assassin 2 missions. These linear set pieces would take Ezio outside of the open world and into scripted missions from the inside of giant landmark locations to the city sewers, all in pursuit of the assassin seals found in the tomb of the great assassin legends that came before. These acted as a way to train Ezio in the history of the assassin lore, whilst proving himself worthy of the armour of Altair by collecting all 6 seals from the assassin tombs. In an age where Assassin's Creed has moved away from linear set pieces in favour of stories told in a less challenging open world design and arguably a more realistic one without the blockbuster feel, does the old format of giving players that dopamine rush still hit the same more than 15 years after AC2's release? Let's find out as we take a deeper look at each of the 6 assassin tombs in AC2. And to address this immediately, yes, there were additional tombs added later as DLC. These took the form of the Templar Lairs and the Auditore Crypt. However, I'm playing AC2 on PC, and whilst these DLC missions are still available on the Ezio collection, unfortunately, the online servers have shut down, and that means any DLC for the non-remastered versions are unavailable for me to play. However, I'm not going to let you down. I will still cover these in the video, despite not having access to them myself. In this hour of desperation, we turned to physical media. With that said, let's get into it. The Assassin Tombs are introduced to you first through the story, giving you a taste of what the tombs have to offer before you unlock the others on the side as the game goes on. Having a cool endgame armour once you complete all of these was reason enough to play them as soon as they were available. Still, I think even Ubisoft acknowledged how much effort went into these and they didn't want players to miss them, and so these tombs are compulsory to finish the main story, although they are still treated as side content. Unlike the rest of the tombs, which I gathered gameplay for especially for this video, this tomb attached to the story I completed on stream, so please forgive the switch up in background gameplay for this entry, although I am going to include some footage of my reaction on that stream because it gives some pretty good insight of my impressions. The biggest sin of Assassin's Creed 2 is that you can only play it once. Tomb 1 is the Santa Maria Novella, fully utilising the linear nature of these missions to take us somewhere that wouldn't be possible in the main open world, that being the catacombs. Oh, the Santa Maria. Whilst we'll see a much heavier appearance of these in the Romulus tombs in Brotherhood, introducing this one in the story was a great way of giving players a taste of what was to come. The claustrophobic atmosphere is something that isn't found in the main game, and that does create a lot of good tension, especially when you start climbing upwards and the falls get more treacherous. The big sweeping shot laying out which way you need to go is an awesome way of opening up the level too. You start small, but very quickly you learn the skill that will be a big part of these tombs in the future. After a quick parkour puzzle to ease you into it, we get an interaction with some guards, which now adds a narrative element to the level. It's a tiny detail, but giving these guards some characterization does a lot to help the context. One guard is shivering due to the cold. He doesn't think this trip is worth it, whereas the other guard assures him that there is a lot of gold to be made. This clues the player into some kind of reward at the end of the level, and also that the risks are worth it. After another puzzle involving parkour and timed levers, we open the next door and get another short cutscene, with the confident guard drawing his sword, whereas the shivering guard from before steers back and calls out, already giving us the contrast between the two in their motivations and their reactions to seeing Ezio. Now we're treated to a stealth section where we can eliminate all of the guards, except this time the door has been left open, and upon clearing the room, the nervous guard from before will begin to run away, and this starts a chase. What I love so much about the Assassin Tombs is their pacing. They're all about 10 minutes long. They don't often give you time to breathe or look back, either through a timed restriction or cases like this, where you need to chase a target. This isn't just a bog standard chase either, as it fully utilises the catacombs premise. We have the old stone pillars and staircases giving way, which leads to more challenging puzzles for us to navigate during the chase. Eventually you learn not to copy the move that the guard is doing in front of you, but instead look for alternate routes that will help you avoid any setbacks, and I think that's a great touch, even if it is brief. There's also a nice resolution to this where you stop the guard before he reaches the reinforcements, and if you do that successfully, you can just walk past the rest of the guards having their lunch and they'll be none the wiser to you being there, saving you a combat encounter and getting you straight to the reward. Now beforehand, you do get a cutscene where you listen in on the Templar meeting, but that's because of the story and is unrelated to the tomb itself. At the end you find the sarcophagus of Darius, a notable character even in the lore before his appearance in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, as Darius was the first known wielder of the Hidden Blade. I do kinda wish the Hidden Blade was therefore incorporated more into this tomb to match his relevance, but I suppose there are a lot more combat encounters in this tomb, and the final act is air assassinating a guard, which could be seen as relevant. And I should say ahead of time that I'm not going to be mentioning the assassins related to the rest of the tombs, because as much as they have incredible stories and a lot of relevance to the overall lore of the series, they have no part in the tombs whatsoever. None of their gimmicks reflect in how the tombs are conveyed. Overall though, this tomb is a fair starting point. It introduces a little bit of everything, and we'll see as the tombs progress how each one takes an aspect from this first one and goes to town on it, whether it's the puzzle aspects or the parkour. Next up, we're travelling to Torre Grossa, the tallest tower in San Gimignano. Gimignano? Is that actually the... Gimignano. I don't know how you say it. San Gimignano. Which says a lot because this city looks like this. Already I'm expecting a vertigo-inducing challenge, one where the wrong slip can result in a very long drop. This tomb starts with a very quick puzzle to get you out of the rat-infested waters, and we see quickly that this area is heavily guarded, and surprisingly a lot more horizontal than you'd expect. After doing some navigation puzzles, you sneak past the guards, and then in the next room, we have a very well looked after library. It's fair to say, this is not what I was expecting at all. It seems like this tomb is more focused on the design of the levels and the exploration, moving room to room using stealth, combat and parkour. It's a neat way of incorporating all three. However, the combat in AC2 is of course lacking. After we've cleared this room, about 3 hours later, we get to the third act, and the part that we've all been waiting for, climbing this tower. It starts very straightforward. We have some beams and a cheeky side eject. There's a part where you naturally go near a ledge to jump off, which I can see tricking some people when you actually need to scale a wall next to it. Oh, we're already at the top? Man, that was disappointing. This tower is 54 meters high in real life, and throughout this mission, you just don't feel it. The tower is like an afterthought or thrown in at the end, but the mission is far too short for this build-up to feel worth it. Also, in terms of narrative, I'm sorry to say, but nothing is going on here. There's no dialogue or reason for the guards to be there. It's just challenges to slow you down, and whilst a good bit of AC2 puzzle solving can't go wrong, I feel like when designing the tower, they kind of ran out of ideas or different ways to challenge the player when climbing up, so they just cut it short. I would have loved a bit more of a cinematic feeling. Maybe Ezio could have slipped at one point and we get a shot looking down at how high up he is, which would add scale to the mission. As it stands, unfortunately, this is a big step down and quite forgettable. Oh man, these names are interesting. Rocca Di Ravaldino, it actually helps when I do an accent, is in Forlì, and it's the one time you'll ever be coming back to Forlì, because there's nothing here. This is a mission that I think helps massively in fleshing out Forlì as a location. It's the most underdeveloped in the game, solely due to how quickly you pass in and out of it during the story. It's just a footnote until sequence 13. However, it's also a very small location, so utilising the sewers underneath to flesh it out is a no-brainer. Starting this level with some forced swimming is a fun touch to differentiate this level and set the scene. We find ourselves in another guard barracks area like in the last tomb, however this tomb has been designed with larger puzzles in each room that are also on a time limit, which gives you some extra haste and urgency when playing the level. The levers that you activate act as checkpoints as you complete each section. There's also a neat part with the shields that you can easily slip up on without knowing that you can climb on them, which is a nice trick and gets you to look around and observe your environment. I do worry, however, that again, this level visually looks so similar to the last one that it doesn't take full advantage of its concept. It's a bit boring as it's just a generic brown area with the occasional ruins in between. However, I will give it this, the last puzzle does make good use of the time trial aspect that this level has been utilising throughout, with a fairly thoughtful bit of parkour to achieve just before you enter the tomb, which isn't too forgiving despite the short length of it. So overall, it's okay, it has some good moments, but it's just not hitting the heights that we'll see later on. Thankfully, the next one is San Marco. Now this is a challenge. A very simple concept of a big old cathedral with 4 separate parkour puzzles that are all very narrowly time-based is a great premise. I love these big European designs and the level of detail in this area is gorgeous, with an orange and purple colour scheme. And it's a good thing too, because you'll be seeing it a fair amount as this is the only area in the tomb. This mission delivers on the scale and quality promised with the assassin tombs. I had to try out these puzzles a couple of times actually due to getting lost in the architecture, and it takes keen attention to figure out how each puzzle can be completed. The time limit is punishing too, without room for a wrong move. Revealing the mural on the floor to be a hidden assassin logo is a great touch too to cap off the level, taking us down into the assassin tomb. You do have to commend the way all of these levels deal with the horizontal and vertical axis. Some tombs are miles in the air, however some are simply hidden a little bit under your feet. That's what makes discovering these locations so fun to find out. It's also just funny to see Ezio pop out of a manhole cover at the end and play it as cool as possible. La Visitazione, the Visit Zone. Once again, we may be in the boring underground decor, however, the mission design here is a lot more unique. We start the level with a big leap of faith which catches the attention of some guards. This brings back some narrative to the levels, which helps give it more personality. This level feels like a greatly extended version of the first tomb, in which the guard ran away at the end, leading Ezio straight to the tomb. Here, the guard starts running at the beginning, and we get a great chase through the Venetian tunnels. However, it doesn't have the interactable elements that the first one had, so it kind of loses a few points there. However, it does feel a bit like a copy and paste of the first tomb, in the sense that if you assassinate the runner before he can alert the others, again you avoid the combat section entirely. Where this was the final set piece of the first tomb, here it's just the start. The second and unfortunately last room is a big parkour puzzle, which is incredibly challenging with a strict time trial and 0 checkpoints. You need to execute a flawless run, which means you're probably going to need a couple of attempts just to get used to the geometry, because some of the paths are a bit fiddly to navigate. Of course, there is also something of a legend lurking in the waters of this room. Yeah, this was one of the first Assassin's Creed games to include a proper Easter egg. If you didn't know already, activating the time trial and then looking over the edge of the water for a few minutes will trigger this secret cutscene. Now that is fucking terrifying. I wouldn't suggest falling in the water. There's also a way of continuing this Easter egg if you look over the edge again after you restart the time trial, where the tentacle will attack Ezio. Jesus. Now, getting back to the challenge, what I love about this mission is that it doesn't treat you like a baby. It tests your skills specifically with timing your side ejects, and you'll feel like a side ejecting pro by the end. That sounds a bit weird now I've said that out loud. Having this take place in a sunken tomb with all these statues and ancient architecture around makes this feel like a memorable room in its own right, never mind the challenge. The aesthetic of this place kind of reminds me of something from The Legend of Zelda. Now, this is a great tomb, but if you know the layout already, then it can be completed in around 5 minutes, and that makes it a very short one, which is a shame. I think the quality of that last room was amazing, but slapping a copy and paste from the first tomb at the start just to pad it out seems a bit lazy, even if it is an improved version. It makes me wish they almost cut the number of tombs down a bit, maybe to 3 or 4, but made them about 20 minutes long each instead of between 5 to 10. It's like they get a good thing going and then the level ends before we get a full exploration, which is a shame. The last proper tomb is, of course, the best one. As I said before though, do stick around as we'll be covering the DLC tombs as well that are unavailable on PC. Il Duomo is a building that everyone who's played AC2 will recognise. This massive black and white patterned building is an iconic part of the map and Florence itself, and home to the highest viewpoint in the entire game. Of course, Ubisoft had to let us inside at some point, and making it a set piece for an assassin tomb is the perfect match. The level starts with this massive sweeping shot of the interior, just highlighting how massive this area is. It's also a great bit of foreshadowing because the shot starts at the top of the bell, which is the location we will reach at the end of the level, and just how long it takes the camera to reach the ground further emphasises the massive scale of this historic building and the task we have ahead of ourselves. We get a little bit of dialogue to set the scene, which was great to hear. The inside of the dome is being painted, and therefore the area is being closed off to the public so that nobody will disturb us. I mean, the painters. It also explains all the beams in wooden architecture we'll find during the level, as it's here to help the painters complete their job. There's also word that the treasures should be left alone, as they're very fragile, which is hilarious because we're here to steal them, and also rub our hands everywhere on these fragile paintings in the process. The mission truly has it all. There's a huge scale to the playground here, and the aesthetics are gorgeous with all the Italian paintings and patterns lining the walls and floors. There's the high tension, as Ezio seems to get smaller and smaller as he works his way up the building, and there's even a route up if I fall.
Bene. Now I have a way back up in case I fall.
Iconic. This tomb doesn't even need to insert a timer or a deadline to the mission. The tension and the risk here comes from making a mistake and falling to your death. You naturally start to slow down and consider your moves more carefully when you see the drop below you, and unlike in the second tomb, this is a dazzling height that just keeps going and going, making you feel even more vertigo, especially right at the end where the camera forces you to look down, and there's this almost optical illusion looking back at you to make the drop look even bigger, which was really effective. Now these are the core 6 tombs in the game, but there were some bonus maps added. Starting with the Auditore family crypt, and honestly, I wish I had more to say about this level. Once again, you are stuck in the underground tunnels. However, what makes this level unique is the interactable lore dumps in between each checkpoint that helps bridge the gap between the Marco Polo segment with Altair in Assassin's Creed Revelations and how Ezio's family became involved in the Assassins. And I suppose it's nice to have these back-to-back rooms of parkour puzzles without any interruptions in between, but it does leave the level feeling a little bit hollow, especially at the end. The fun of the Assassin Tombs is of course the journey more than the destination, but unlocking the armour of Altair at the end was a cherry on top to showcase your accomplishments. And with all this lore about the assassins and the significance of this being Ezio's family crypt, it hypes you up for a unique reward at the end. Maybe it's the Auditore family sword or a new cape. Or it could just be a bit of money. That's very disappointing. And it kinda makes this whole tomb feel like it wasn't worth it in the long run. Finally, let's go through the 3 Templar Lairs added with the DLC. Starting off, we have Home Invasion, and it's criminal that this wasn't included in the main game, as it's basically a story mission in which Lorenzo de' Medici has been attacked by Templars in his home, and it's your job to rescue him. We open with Ezio being attacked by some Templars on the ground floor of Lorenzo's home, and then nicely transition into a bit of parkour to navigate out of this first room. What helps this mission isn't just the strong narrative urgency, but also the rooms being huge and having puzzles to navigate through them makes them feel like assassin tombs, with the same mechanics instead of the main game's levels. What I mean is, this doesn't feel like cut content from the story even though it could have been. It feels like it's been given the time and care to mix the assassin tomb format with a stronger narrative hook. It's almost like they were experimenting with using the assassin tomb format more in the main story's missions, which is fascinating considering we did get that in Assassin's Creed Revelations. Moving to the second floor, we get a few more hints at the story here. We learn of secret passageways in the home, and also that Lorenzo may already be dead, so we need to hurry. I like that the level uses all aspects of the home. It's not just running around corridors, we go to the outside of the building and scale the exterior to find pathways back inside, which keeps the mission feeling dynamic and always changing even aesthetically, with each floor of Lorenzo's home having a more lavish and interior design. After completing some more puzzles and unlocking Lorenzo's secret bunker, we complete the level by clearing the area of Templars and saving Lorenzo. We get a nice interaction with him where he lets us take his entire stash and a bit of cash on the side, and we carry on our way. Honestly, this might be one of my favourite tomb style missions in this game. I love the combination of the art style with each floor of the house, the scale with going in and out whilst it gets ransacked, the urgency to save Lorenzo, and the typical guard banter in between. It's got the best of everything, and it's even a bit longer than the typical mission, giving you a bit more time in this scenario, which went a long way to helping it feel properly fleshed out. This next one is called Over Beams Under Stone, and it takes us into a church in Venice for another large-scale parkour challenge. And this one is just plain solid. There's not much to comment on honestly, because it's a well designed layout that you slowly uncover as you work your way around the area. It's what makes these tombs so interesting, especially in Il Duomo. The way you see this big sprawling puzzle in front of you and slowly uncover it and understand how to traverse it as you play is extremely satisfying and just something we honestly haven't had since AC3 with the Captain Kidd missions. This Templar Lair isn't anything special in terms of standing out from the rest, but copying the format of Il Duomo works spectacularly, and it's such a treat to revise that format again one more time, but in blue. The final Templar Lair is called Shipwrecked, again in Venice, as this is the shipyards used to build the boats, which makes it a great set piece that once again adds more to the lore and fleshes out the world of AC2, as we spend more time in areas that the main open world hub could never incorporate. Also, this layout just reminds me of that mission from Dishonored's Knife of Dunwall expansion, so it gets more points in my books. This level is once again a big open area that lays down all its chips immediately, by piquing your interest at the start, giving a 360 view of the level before you start, lets you see all of the fun challenges and unique architecture you'll be traversing ahead of time, which makes it more fun when you reach them. Once you navigate to the next section, we get a little cutscene with one of the ship architects being caught sneaking around by a guard and thrown off a balcony, which is a funny way of conveniently giving us a route up if we fall, but also hints at what's been happening here in the shipyard. Naturally, we kill the heavy guard and then the runner flees, giving us our third chase in these tombs. But I dare say that this one is the best. We just spent a fair amount of time slowly but meticulously working our way around this ship to get through the room. So how fun is it that this chase not only utilises areas of that ship that we hadn't seen yet, but then reveals an entire second room with an even bigger ship that we have to chase this guard around. This set piece is brilliant as we duck and weave in and out of the ship, through the lower decks and then to the top deck before getting the drop on our target as usual. It's after this when we get shown the door to the Templar Lair, and I not only realise we are at the end, but that this entire mission was a flipped version of the Visitazione that we covered earlier, which started with killing the heavy guard and chasing the runner before a tense parkour challenge. Here, we get the parkour challenge first and then chase the runner, which is a better format, I feel, to build up the tension and then release it at the end. I kinda hoped for a little bit more with this one, however, just because it was so good, and I was surprised it ended so suddenly without giving us more to this narrative with the shipbuilder. Like, what did they need him for specifically, and what was the grander plan with taking over this area? Either way, this brings us to the end of the Templar Lairs, and thus the end of the Assassin Tombs in AC2, and I must say, it's a much more mixed bag than I thought going into this. Some of the missions are a bit underwhelming and short. You get the impression that they were still figuring out the format of these linear missions, and didn't quite know how to deliver that shot of adrenaline that later tombs in AC Brotherhood would take full advantage of. As it stands, we have clear standouts in the 3 cathedral locations and some tense parkour puzzles in others, alongside the massive scale and impressive art direction. I think the narratives were a bit underbaked and could have been expanded on, as we only get maybe one cutscene for each level, unless it's the Lorenzo one that prioritised storytelling first. I would say that my favourite is Il Duomo, or Home Invasion, with my least favourite being Torre Grossa, which massively underutilised its premise of being set in a tall tower, and instead spent most of its time in a warehouse. And for a second, I'd say the Auditore Crypt for just being boring and having a rubbish reward at the end too. Overall, I think the tombs set a good groundwork, and we'll see in AC Brotherhood how it takes the lessons learned from AC2 and adapts them into more cinematic, narrative-driven missions. So which is your favourite tomb in AC2? Which is your least favourite, and what lessons do you think could be taken from them going forward in the franchise? Let me know down below, and please consider liking the video and subscribing if you would like to see more, and I'll see you in the next video.